clearly we got to get the word out, and we're getting the word out. And it's going to go viral. I believe this time together in this presentation is going to have a tremendous impact. I do believe that some of the issue is just a lack of awareness. But as we continue to stay committed with awareness and education, and as you will hear at the end of this, a serious call to action, Planned Parenthood will be defunded. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Freda Bush, who's a medical doctor. She's been involved in women's health for more than 40 years. She obtained her medical degree from the University of Mississippi Medical Center and completed her residency from the University of Tennessee in Memphis. Dr. Bush is a practicing OBGYN in Jackson, Mississippi, and is a clinical instructor in the Department of OBGYN and Department of Family Medicine at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. She's a fellow in the American College OBGYN and a board member of the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs. She has co-authored with Dr. Joess McElhaney 2 books, Girls Uncovered, New Research on What America's Sexual Culture Does to Young Women, and Hooked, New Science on How Casual Sex is Affecting Our Children. It's a very powerful book. I recommend you purchase that. She's been married for 43 years to her husband, Lee, an engineer, and they have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. Please welcome Dr. Freda Bush.
Good afternoon. Every human being is a person who is unique and endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And the first among these is the right to life. If you knew that there was a life-threatening danger to you, your family, your community, what would be your instinctive response? Flight or fight for the weakest and the least among us? There has been a conscious drumbeat of myths, half-truths, and lies about abortion that has desensitized us to the reality of this clear and present danger. Myth number 1, abortion is safer than childbirth. A widely accepted indicator of women's health is the maternal mortality rate, or MMR. If abortion were truly critical for the well-being of mothers, one would expect maternal mortality rate to decrease with increased abortion availability and to increase as abortions were restricted. Despite the availability of abortion since 1973, the MMR in the United States has actually doubled. The last reported MMR by the CDC for white women is 9.5 deaths per 100,000 live births. For African Americans, the rate is more than 3 times that at 32.7 deaths. A recently published collaborative study by scientists from both the United States and Chile using objective data demonstrate the effects of improved medical care, increased education of women, and prohibition of abortion on maternal mortality. The overall rate of the MMR from 1957 through 2007 in Chile decreased from 270 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births to 18, from 270 maternal deaths to 18.7, a decrease of 93.7%. After Chile outlawed abortion, the downward trend in maternal mortality continued with a decrease from 41 to 12.7, nearly 70% decrease. Another study of the medical records for nearly 500,000 women in Denmark revealed significantly higher maternal mortality rates following abortion compared to delivery. It's a human tragedy when a woman dies giving birth. Her death forever changes her community and family for all future generations. It's both a tragedy and a human rights failure when a woman died needlessly of a preventable cause. Abortion is preventable. and these studies show an increase in maternal mortality where abortion is prevalent. Now, one may ask, what about the medical abortions? Aren't they safer? In 2000, the U.S. approved with restrictions mifepristone, also known as Mifeprex, and RU-486. Because Mifeprex is a dangerous drug, the FDA restrictions allow only doctors to give the drugs to patients after an ultrasound, and they require a follow-up medical exam to check for hemorrhaging or infection and to determine if the abortion was complete or if portions of the dead baby were left inside the mother. Within a year, the first maternal deaths from RU-486 were reported in the United States. The father of this previously healthy 18-year-old set up a website, abortionpillsrisk.org, warning women of the RU-486 potentially deadly risk. Since that time, at least 14 women have died from taking the drug. There have been over 2,200 adverse events requiring over 600 hospitalizations for complications, including hemorrhaging requiring blood transfusion, infections, and ectopic pregnancy. Now, Planned Parenthood admits to providing Mifeprex in a way that fails 23% of the time. In spite of FDA-recommended limits of medical abortions to 7 weeks or 49 days of pregnancy, some Planned Parenthood centers provided up to 63 days of gestation, and when it fails, they can provide the woman with a second surgical abortion, an abortion that is now more expensive since she is further along in her pregnancy. The outcome? Greater profits for Planned Parenthood at the risk of women's health and lives. Today, despite the known dangers, Planned Parenthood is increasing its distribution of Mifeprex through the use of telemedicine. That is, video conferencing in place of a face-to-face visit between doctor and patient. This practice is a flagrant violation of the FDA protocol and is a violation of the spirit, if not the letter of the law in states designed to protect women. In February 2011, 71 members of Congress wrote to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, regarding the potential inappropriate use of federal funds by Planned Parenthood for telemedicine equipment that would be used to dispense abortion drugs. To my knowledge, to date, the concerned members of Congress have received no reply. Myth number 2, abortion does not cause mental health issues. A new study which offers the largest quantitative estimate of mental health risk associated with abortion was published in the highly regarded British Journal of Medicine in 2011. The increased risk of anxiety disorders was 34% for depression, 37% for alcohol use abuse, 110% for marijuana use abuse, and for suicide behaviors, 155%. When compared to unintended pregnancy delivered, pregnancy aborted women had a 55% increase of experiencing mental health problems. In a survey of teenage girls by researchers at the University of Minnesota, the rate of attempted suicide in the 6 months prior to the study increased tenfold, from 0.4% for girls who had not aborted to 4% for girls who had aborted. A Finnish study that looked at maternal health status 1 year after delivery and 1 year after abortion found women who chose abortion have a 6 times higher suicide rate than women who choose to deliver. These are coroner-certified suicides. Myth number 3, there is no increased risk of premature birth for women who have abortions. There's a huge increase in preterm births in the United States, 30% since 1981, and it's a major public health concern, both from the standpoint of infant mortality and morbidity, but also from the standpoint of an immense cost burden this problem places on our healthcare system. The United States has an infant mortality rate among the highest of developed nations. Prematurity is the leading cause of infant mortality and morbidity. African Americans are leading the nation in infant mortality as well as obtaining the highest number of abortions. Interestingly, African Americans are 36% of the Mississippi population but obtain 78% of the abortions. Tragically, in Mississippi, the non-white premature birth weight is 20.1 per 1,000 live births, and the infant mortality rate is 12.8, the highest in the United States. There are 127 published peer-reviewed articles spanning 5 decades, all showing an increased risk of preterm birth following an abortion. Obviously, the risk is totally unavoidable if the woman would not choose to have an abortion. Immediately, with a couple of affirmative steps, women's reproductive health could improve while lowering the morbidity and mortality of women and infants. Number 1, require that abortion providers administer the abortion drugs in the manner approved by the FDA and the drugs manufacturer. Number 2, require clinic provider regulations in all 50 states and the territories be the same as existing regulations that govern ambulatory surgical centers, including health inspections and requiring them to be licensed. As a gynecologist, I have treated several patients with complications following an abortion. And if I have to have hospital privileges and malpractice insurance, why should not the abortionist be held to the same high standards? The clinic visited by Tanya Reeves, the 24-year-old who died following a late-term abortion, is a Planned Parenthood facility in Chicago that should not have performed surgical abortions according to their website. They delayed seeking help for 5 hours, and when they finally transported her to the trauma center, the ER doctors blindly assessed her because they were not aware of the extent of her injuries or of her medical history. As Tanya and her unborn child's death demonstrate, abortion and the substandard care abortionists provide destroys life. It not only kills the unborn child, but increases the mother's risk of numerous health problems that are well documented in the literature. For those who believe in evidence-based medicine, the evidence for abortion-associated complications is abundant. And one of the most disgusting and harmful aspects is the lack of true informed consent. Promoting abortion on demand without limits is about creating abortion rights that benefit the abortion providers and their bottom line. It is not about protecting women's health. Though she may not die physically, a woman is never the same when she has an abortion. And as my grandmother used to say, when you know better, you do better.
Thank you, Dr. Bush, for discussing some of those myths with us. Next, we're going to look at the economic impact. And Reverend Walter Hoy II will be presenting. He's both founder and president of the Issues for Life Foundation. He's author of the book Leadership from the Inside Out, and is in demand as a speaker and consultant. He and his wife, Lori, are ministry partners. Now, here's a quote. It says, Walter embodies the Martin Luther King Jr. legacy, standing up for the least of these, the vulnerable mothers and their babies. That's from Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who you'll hear from a little bit later. Please welcome to the podium now, Reverend Walter Hoy II.
Dr. Hunter, it's good to see you. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was a landmark decision by the United States Supreme Court. This decision held that persons of African descent brought into the United States and held as slaves, including their descendants, were not and are to be considered slaves. They were not persons protected by the United States Constitution and consequently were not legally United States citizens. The fact is that almost every aspect of the American economy in the 1800s was at some level or another invested in the slave business. So stripping legal personhood from the people of African descent was not only viewed as critical to the legalization of slavery in America, it was also understood to be a crucial economic necessity of the American economy. Slaves were simply more valuable as property than persons. In the life debate today, not much has changed. Today, the abortion industry is a billion-dollar business whose lifeblood depends on the shed blood of aborted children inside the wombs of their mothers. And much like the United States Supreme Court Dred Scott decision of 1857, the United States Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision of 1973 refused to acknowledge the personhood of the child inside the womb and instead constitutionally gave birth to a rabid and racist billion-dollar abortion industry. Just as slaves in the 1800s were viewed as economic liabilities the moment they became free, so today our children, yet in their mother's wombs, are viewed as economic liabilities the moment they are born. However, is it true that ending the life of a developing baby provides a stepping stone to women seeking to advance personally and professionally? Is it true that children born to parents struggling economically are a financial drain to the American economy? Let's take a closer look and see for ourselves the massive economic impact of abortion in America. There used to be 16 workers for every person on Social Security. That is now down to 3. Soon, it will only be 2. The average worker will have to pay more than $6,000 in taxes just to support one person receiving $12,000 a year in Social Security benefits. If you are paying $4,000 a year in Social Security premiums now, that will go up by at least 50%, or Social Security will simply go bust, and you won't receive anything. Every life lost from abortion is one less future worker, consumer, taxpayer, future parent of the next generation. The gross domestic product per capita multiplied by the number of abortions per year since abortion became legal is the best measure of that loss. Over the last 45 years, the abortion industry has taken in an estimated $26 billion from abortion. But the cost to the country as a whole, in terms of lost GDP, has been 2,000 times that amount, an accumulative $50 trillion, or roughly 3 times our national debt. This economic impact is compounded by wide acceptance of contraception, which has reduced births by another 25 to 30 million people. That adds another $20 trillion to lost GDP. Federal aid to Planned Parenthood is expected to reach $450 million this year. That's almost $500 million taxpayer dollars going directly to the largest abortion provider in the country. That's $1,250 for every abortion Planned Parenthood performs. Planned Parenthood estimates that under the president's health care plan, abortion should rise 20% or more. Why do the math? Is our personal convenience today worth the economic stagnation our children will have to endure tomorrow? What if you were offered $100,000 right now, or a job for a penny a day, double, for 31 days? Which would you choose? If you chose to work for a penny a day, that was double for 31 days, you would have earned $10,737,418.24. The difference between $100,000 today and $10 million tomorrow is why we do the math. Let me summarize. The economic impact of abortion is a $50 to $70 trillion lost in gross domestic product and the future stagnation of our American economy. The financial handwriting on the wall is clear. Abortion has disproportionately impacted Black Americans. Instead of lifting up the most vulnerable members of our society out of poverty, abortion increases poverty. As more Americans move toward retirement age, abortion assures that there will be little to no tax base available to fund their retirement when Social Security fails. Essentially, the economic impact of abortion is the fast track to national suicide. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Hoy, for painting that picture. As it relates to the economic impact, I want to present to you now Ryan Scott Baumberger, who I got to say is my kind of guy. I love what he does. Media-wise, is just some powerful things. You've already seen some examples of that. Just to read his bio, he has a unique perspective of the innate nature of purpose as an adoptee, an adoptive father along with his wife. Ryan's biological mother was raped, yet courageously chose to go through 9 months of pregnancy, giving him life. As Chief Creative Officer of the Radiance Foundation, Baumberger uses creative ad campaigns, powerful live multimedia presentations, and compassionate community outreach to illuminate the truth about God's given purpose. Ryan is also a devoted husband and father. Please welcome Ryan Baumberger.
It's a long journey to that podium there. Apparently this thing went right in for me. Here we go.
Selflessness, right? Had it for everybody else.
Could someone run this for me, please? Oh my goodness.
We don't know how.
I can teach you. Replication is a very important thing. Well, good afternoon. It is awesome and actually deeply disturbing to actually have to address this issue. The fact that we even have to fight to get people to see what we see. So I'm going to start off with what this is all about when it comes to the abortion industry.
just.
The problem with untrue.
Socialist country, and the country is very clear. They feel like this is a settled issue.
I'm not for abortion. I'm for choice.
Black women don't have access to insurance and doctors.
We stand for the teaching of honest, realistic sex education.
Everyone agrees partial birth abortion is horrific.
So many women were found bleeding, dead, with hangers in their bodies.
Don't fight for the rights of females in the womb, though. They have no rights to you.
They have the same rights that your kids even have.
Tell me lies. Don't tell me lies.
You know, don't let anybody tell you that this is about anything else other than lies, sex, and money. That's what it's all about. In fact, I call this the Negro Project 2.0. Yes, it's amazing how human history, we just love to repeat cycles over and over again. Negro Project 2.0, different century, different Negroes, same lies. Since Dr. Johnny Hunter, who is, where is he? And Pat. Love you guys. Since Dr. Johnny Hunter and those you see gathered here and many across the country, Connie Eller, Zena Hackworth, and so many others have started to illuminate the issue of black genocide through abortion in our country, Planned Parenthood began to realize the wisdom in its founder's words. She says, quote, "I do not believe that this project should be directed or run by white medical men." She's referring to the Negro Project, the original one in 1939. "The Federation should direct it with guidance and assistance of the colored group, perhaps particularly and specifically formed for that purpose." She said this of the Negro Project, which was initiated with all the humanity and the compassion that marked the Holocaust influencing eugenics movement. Let's remember the Negro Project was a Planned Parenthood initiative that claimed that poverty would be severely reduced or eliminated. Yeah, they didn't quite get there. But they did continue to target poorer blacks. Now, people say, well, they call it a conspiracy theory when it's historically documented. There's no dispute that there actually was a Negro Project, but there wasn't a Caucasian project. There wasn't a Latina project. There wasn't an Asian project, a Negro Project. And so I just want to read for you a quote. This is from one of the doctors who served on the Negro Project Advisory Board, Dr. Dorothy Farabee, also a black American. "Those of us who believe that the benefits of Planned Parenthood as a vital key to the elimination of human waste must reach the entire population also believe that a double effort must be made to extend this program as a public health measure to Negroes whose need is proportionately greater." Wow, we still hear the same things today. Nothing has ever changed. What has changed is the debate. Since some of my colleagues here who have helped, Catherine Davis especially, launch our TooManyAborted.com billboards in Atlanta and in cities across the country, Reverend Hoy in California, Planned Parenthood hates us because we expose them, yes. We expose them for who they are. And who they are and what they're all about is abortion. In fact, and this is one of my favorite, this is actually a collaboration between Issues for Life and Radiance Foundation, Fatherhood Begins in the Womb. I want to talk about, really briefly, this. I just want to remind you of this number, 363,705, the number of deaths, number of abortions in the black community, which dwarfs all other causes of death combined, 289,366, according to the CDC. That's what we have to constantly keep in mind. Now, I just want to talk about how they frame this debate. Because they frame this debate, first of all, Planned Parenthood will be the first one out there to tell you, well, Martin Luther King Jr. praised us. We gave him the inaugural Margaret Sanger Award. Well, let's put things in context. First of all, many of our leaders, or actually none of our leaders, are omniscient. And he certainly didn't know that there that contraception as the solution to poverty didn't pan out. We have now years and years, decades of data to look at that. The other thing they don't tell you is that in 1966, when they gave him the award, that shiny little Margaret Sanger Award they call the Maggie Award, abortion wasn't legal. So he was not advocating the slaughter of millions. In fact, in his column in Ebony, thanks to Dr. Alveda King over here, his column in Ebony magazine, he specifically wrote and spoke out against abortion. But Planned Parenthood doesn't want you to know that. So they try to reframe the debate. I just want, really quickly, any Tim Tebow fans in here? Yeah. Okay. And if you're not, it's okay. I just want to touch on this real quickly because people ask, well, there's no present-day examples of targeting. We've laid out so many examples. There are so many, but I want to take one that's so disturbing. This is a few years ago. Remember the whole flack and the whole flap over, CBS airing this ad by Focus on the Family. Oh my word, they're actually going to talk about abortion, but they didn't mention the word abortion. But Planned Parenthood's response to a white mother talking about the decision that she made, she chose not to abort Tim Tebow, their response was this.
I'm Sean James. I'm a former college and professional football player.
I'm Al Jordan. I won the Olympic gold medal in the triple jump.
I love my family and I love sports.
And Super Bowl weekend is a perfect time to honor both sports and family.
There's a lot of talk leading up to the Super Bowl about an ad focused on sports and family. The ad features a great football player, Tim Tebow, and his loving mother discussing a difficult medical decision she made for her family.
Now, I'm not going to play the whole thing because Planned Parenthood's response to an ad about a woman making a choice for life was to feature two black athletes. Who's their target demographic? That's Planned Parenthood for you. So let's just talk about the pawns. Because since TooManyAborted.com campaigns and every other initiative launched by those up here, Planned Parenthood has realized that they have to kind of pull together some resources. And those resources are black folk who are part of the Negro Project 2.0. Let me just kind of introduce you to some of those pawns. Vanessa Cullins, Dr. Vanessa Cullins, who you saw in the Lies video, said black women don't have access to doctors or insurance. She didn't say some black women. She didn't give a percentage. She said black women don't have access. Lies. She is the VP of Medical Affairs. When you're paid $300,000 a year, I guess you'll lie about anything. So first and foremost, she's at the top of that tier. There's also Dr. Willie J. Parker. I'm not sure what, Dr. Willie J. Parker. Actually, I'm not going to play this just yet. Dr. Willie J. Parker is the medical director of Planned Parenthood Metropolitan right here in D.C. And he says he was inspired to become a late-term abortionist by Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, if it weren't so ridiculous and the whole situation so tragic, it would be funny, but this is what they get away with. In an article in New Jersey newspaper, Dr. Willie Parker talked about how he was so inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. to become a good Samaritan, to provide these late-term abortions. See, the problem with that story, the Good Samaritan actually preserved and saved someone's life. Someone like Dr. Willie Parker is akin to the robbers who robbed the traveler and left the traveler for dead and made a profit off of the encounter. There are more, like Ludwig P. Gaines, the African-American Leadership Engagement Director for Planned Parenthood of America. Ludwig Gaines said that abortion and food stamps elevate the black community. Okay, think about that one. Don't have time to go into all that ridiculousness, but just so you know, when it comes to food stamps, perpetual and generational welfare, children who grow up in single female-led homes are 5 times more likely to live in poverty. That's not an uplift. Then there's Veronica Bird, who's the newly hired director of African American Media, Planned Parenthood Federation, and I want to jump. Sorry, keep jumping to this video. I'm not ready yet, and I'm the one controlling it. There's Carol McDonald, who is the director of strategic partnerships for Planned Parenthood, and she drives around the little Pepto bus. And she's quite the cheerleader. You search for her on YouTube. But this is what she wrote in BET, which the acronym for me stands for Black Enslavement Television. But in an article she wrote for BET, she talks about, disparaging Mitt Romney and says that if we defund Planned Parenthood, millions of women, including black women, will have nowhere to turn for basic health care. Nowhere to turn for basic health care. Words are important. So, According to the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Population Affairs, they say in approximately 75% of U.S. counties, there's at least one clinic that receives Title X funding. That amounts to about 4,500 clinics. Planned Parenthood has a little over 800 clinics, and not all of those are Title X funded. So let's just say, 3,700, 3,800 medical clinics that provide the exact same reproductive health care as Planned Parenthood. They just don't kill. And yet, these are the lies, part of the Negro Project 2.0, to make the black community believe that Planned Parenthood is the savior of the black community. No thanks, we already have a savior.
Millions of Americans have stories. So we got on the bus, brought a camera, and let people speak for themselves. So we listened to patients, to healthcare providers, to those who have been on the front lines, and those worried about the next generation.
I said, well, this is a really tough decision, and there were some tears, but I actually left the procedure going, okay, this is the best decision for me. 3 kids is a good number. I only have so much lab space. I only have so much living space. I only have so much time in the day.
I'm almost done.
And they're all over the country. And you may know that there are forces out there that have been trying to destroy Planned Parenthood. We saw one of those forces not too long ago, and you know that I was involved, and they put some billboards right over here off of I-75 that said black children, an endangered species. But we are not a species. We are God's children, created in God's image.
This is Planned Parenthood. It helps me to be a better pastor.
This is a documentary put out by Planned Parenthood called A Vital Service. So according to Planned Parenthood, black genocide is the vital service. Last but not least, I'm going to jump ahead here to Representative Emanuel Cleaver, chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Yet another example of the Negro Project 2.0. And all I need to say here, you've got the Congressional Black Caucus, of which Congressman West is an illustrious member of, and perhaps alone philosophically and politically. But unfortunately, Representative, and yes, but perhaps the Congressional Black Caucus typifies liberal leaders who will sacrifice our future for political power. Just want to give you a little example here. Representative Emanuel Cleaver, this is a letterhead from Missouri Citizens for Life. Right there on the right side, you see how his name is listed there, because before he ran for office, he was pro-life. And so all I wonder is, what was he willing to trade his soul for? Thank you.
In 1948, the United Nations held a convention where they declared genocide a crime under international law. The parties, of which the United States was one, defined genocide as follows. Genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, A, killing members of the group. Since Roe v. Wade was decided, between 16 million and 19 million black babies have died at the abortionist's hand. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Between 8 to 9 million black women have faced bodily and mental harm because of the abortion decision, including depression, suicide, alcohol, or drug abuse and death, like Tanya Reeves, the most recent victim of abortion. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Groups such as Planned Parenthood, NARAL, National Abortion Federation, and others have created a culture to push black women towards abortion centers. They have used the black infant and maternal mortality rates to support construction of abortion centers. They have spent tens of millions marketing abortions to blacks and have launched initiatives to ensure black abortion-minded women do not have access to resources that may help change their minds. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. They have sought the agreement of our government to control the black birth rate. We need look no further than the 100-day plan Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry gave to President Obama after he was elected in 2007. And E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. As you have heard, 4 of the 5 prongs of genocide are being met every day in abortion centers across the nation. You have heard the goals of Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers to achieve an optimum population size. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that Roe was the decision that was going to let us get rid of the populations we didn't want too many of. Frederick Osborne, former leader in the American Eugenics Society, said in 1974 that birth control and abortion are turning out to be the greatest eugenic advances of our time. If they had been advanced for eugenic reasons, it would have retarded or stopped their acceptance. Women such as Laura Hope Smith of Massachusetts, Tanya Reeves of Chicago, Illinois, Sharika Mayo of Johnson City, Tennessee, have died at the hands of abortionists all across America. What has been touted as the safest surgical procedure in the United States and Canada is leaving a trail of women reproductively injured or dead all across the nation. Abortion centers in many states are unsafe, many in squalid conditions, such as Gosnell's House of Horror in Pennsylvania. This program today is a call to action to every American and every Black American. Each of us can no longer sit idly by as women are pushed from behind toward abortion centers located primarily in urban areas where Blacks reside. The National Black Pro-Life Organizations you heard from today invites you to join us in calling for the complete defunding of Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the nation, and for a criminal investigation of abortionists that negligently and in a depraved manner terminate the lives of women such as Tanya Reeves, who was left bleeding for more than 5 hours in a Planned Parenthood. Call your congressman, call your senator, call your governor, and every elected official and bring their attention to America's genocide. Visit blackprolifecoalition.org for more information. And thank you for allowing us to address this horrid issue today.
Thank you. Before we get to questions and answers, we want to ask Dr. Alveda King just to share a couple of words. She has to catch a plane, but she wants to introduce a book that captures much of what you heard today. Please welcome Dr. Alveda King.
Thank you. In 1957, my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., delivered a message, and at the end of that message, he spoke these words: "Help me to see that I'm just a symbol of a movement. Oh God, help me to see myself in true perspective. Help me, oh God, to see that I'm just a symbol of a movement. Help me to see that I'm the victim of what the Germans called a zeitgeist, and that something was getting ready to happen in history, and that a boycott would have taken place in Montgomery, Alabama, if I had never come to Alabama. help me to realize that I'm where I am because of the forces of history and because of the 50,000 Negroes of Alabama who will never get their names in the papers and in the headlines. Oh God, help me to see that where I stand today, I stand because others helped me to stand there and because the forces of history projected me there. And this moment would have come in history even if M.L. King had never been born. People ask us why we do what we do. And we've written much of those testimonies and much of the information that you have just heard today. In our book, Life at All Costs, is edited by Dr. Laverne Talbert and myself, and most of us that you see before you and in the room are also authors. The next page, please. That's the picture of the contributors in the book. And let's just go to the last slide. I want to point out, and that's why I shared Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. This is a civil rights story, and we pray that you will read our book, Life at All Costs, and that what we're doing is not in vain, because we do it for God, and we do it for the babies and the women and our families. God bless you today.